At your age, I already had a house and a car. A phrase that we hear a lot today, and more if you are a millennial or a Gen Z. But the millennials and Gen Z are poorer than baby boomers and Generation X were at our age, or not. As with the issue of whether or not money buys happiness, this is a sensitive and taboo subject for many, as there are various opinions. So in this video, I want to talk and show both sides of the coin, in which our generations are poorer than those older than our age, and the opposite side. That we make much more money and have more facilities than they did at our age. Let's start with what they say, and that is that millennials are just as rich or make a lot of money just like our parents did. Baby boomers are those who were born between 1946 and 1964. Attempts to measure multi-generational wealth often use the Federal Reserve Survey of Consumer Finances, and one way to interpret that data is to show that when baby boomers were 30 years, they control more than 20% of our national wealth, while millennials of a similar age only have 3.5% of the national wealth today. And according to this study, although it seems true, you are forgetting a bigger one. There were many more baby boomers than millennials, and they represented a much larger proportion than the population when they were 30 years old. In this graph, we can see the differences in generational wealth of each generation of boomers, Generation X and Millennial. Even so, it is said that the boomers were still or are richer than their previous generation, since they could save from their income to generate wealth, and with that they bought a house, bonds, cars, and way more things. Although apparently, according to studies and history, not everything is so pretty for boomers, because inequality within generations has been increasing, with rich boomers being richer than previous generations, while poor boomers getting poorer than previous generations. In 2019, 49% of millennials lived in homes they own, compared to 48% of boomers at comparable age. But it has also been proven that the life of millennials is very different from that of boomers or Generation X, just as we have had other opportunities that were not available before. So we can see that according to these studies, millennials are definitely doing a little better, but many things have to be taken into account, because we are doing much better, but at the same time, the cost of living is way higher than that of the boomers. According to this article, Generation Z has 86% less purchasing power than baby boomers at 20. I want to start by showing this post that I saw on Instagram from a content creator called Ryan Scribner, in which it is about a newspaper from a long time ago, as you can see, in which we can see that we could buy a house with 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a parking, and a porch for $7,450, which would be a monthly payment of $47.92. And they will say, sure, but $7,000 before was much more money than today, and it is completely true. So let's look in history for the prices of the moment to compare them with now. An average house in 1980 cost $64,500, while an average person in the United States income was $21,000, which means that if he spent all his income to pay for the house, it would take him approximately 3 years to pay the house completely. Whereas if we review 2022, the year that just passed, median home prices was $435,000, while median income was approximately $70,000, which means that we generate 16% of the price of the house in a year without counting interest on a loan. So it would take us approximately 6 years to pay off a house, double what was needed in 1980. But obviously no one is going to spend 100% of their income on a house and a mortgage. And that's why we also see the differences in that before you could take out a loan on a house and pay it off in 13 years, whereas that now the average is 30 years or even 40 years now with the new laws that are coming out. This is one of the reasons why we always hear that the millennials are a lazy generation, that they are falling behind or a much weaker generation than the previous ones. And something that I think is important to take into account is not only the prices of houses that has increased, but also the price of life as such, thanks to inflation. In this table, we can see the increase in house prices from 1970 to today. Not only that, but spending $100,000 on a house in 1990 would be the same as spending $377,724 on a house today, while $100,000 for a daily living expense in 1990 would be $231,081 today, which would be a growth of 277%, and the price of a house 131% in the cost of living from day to day. But if we buy from 2020, it would be a 42% growth in the price of a house and 13% in the cost of living thanks to inflation. Look at that huge increase that we saw in just 2 years in the price of a house compared to 32 years of growth since 1990. And this is one of the reasons why millennials take longer to move out of their parents' house in general, because the cost of living is so high that it is not worth it. Just like they usually get married later. Just like we usually get married later. Since before, they used to get married at 18, 20 years old, mostly. But now it's not the same thing. Now, that's just the day-to-day cost plus the cost of housing. But another reason the boomers were doing better too is because of education costs, because they were much lower than they are today. Another reason why many today decide not to go to a university or to college is because it is simply not profitable for them after graduation, thanks to the fact that salaries have not risen as fast as inflation and the cost of housing, unless people want to study medicine, engineering, law, or some career or major that really requires a diploma. Because apart from that, when you leave and graduate from college, what they offer you is an entry-level salary. A position for beginners that is not even for beginners, because some or most already ask for up to 2 years of experience, regardless of whether you just graduated from college or not, which makes many look for a job that pay way less or that has nothing to do with what they just graduated from. Me, for example. So in summary, student loans are way higher. Income or salaries are much lower since they have not had that rapid salary inflation like that of the economy. Properties are much higher and the cost from day-to-day living is really high as well. But something that cannot be denied is that now there are way more opportunities in certain aspects. The internet and technology have allowed many to manage to work from home or create their own business from home with a single computer and few employees, while before everything was way more complicated when you wanted to create a new business. But at the same time, there is much more competition right now, and that makes generating money not that easy. In my country, they say that before it was like blowing and making a bottle, and not anymore. Meaning that before, the vast majority of people who set up a business or started a business would do really well. It didn't matter if you were just selling apples, they were making a lot of money. Well, today the competition is such that it's really big, and it has to be a business with way more study, money invested, and more. But it is necessary to accept that there are more facilities today than before. So what can we do to be able to stand out in this era as a millennial or Generation Z? First and foremost, although it seems very obvious, control your expenses, since many today live paycheck to paycheck and really nothing will ever be it. And like that, you will not be able to achieve that much. For example, if you are trying to rent a condo, the rent should not be more than 30% of your gross income in order to have enough money for the rest of your expenses, which we know can be quite difficult depending on where you live and what is your salary. Now, if the rent exceeds that 30%, then you are going to have to be way more stricter with your day-to-day expenses. And the same happens when looking for a loan or a mortgage. Another very important point is that today the cost of a car is quite high. between a loan or a lease of a car with the highest interest plus the insurance, maintenance, and gas is really high. The average monthly payment today is more than $700 for a car, which I think is too high, much since when my boyfriend got his car, for example, he used to pay $150 a month plus 90 for insurance, and that was in 2016. So it is already time to look for ways to save as much as you can and start investing, thinking about your retirement through a Roth IRA account, for example, to be able to save thinking about the future. Since unfortunately, according to studies, our generation is screwed in terms of money, and the crisis that we have been experiencing in recent years have not helped that much. But at the same time, they have created many opportunities for our generation. And try not to think too much about it, since you can get to the point of thinking that you are falling behind. So if you're already at that point and you think that you're falling behind, I'm going to post a video next week about talking about that. Here, I'll leave you a video of how money can buy happiness, and here for you to subscribe. Thank you, and see you next time.